Hello and welcome to On This Day in History, daily insight into what has happened in the past and how has influenced the events of the present on this day, because yesterday makes today and changes what happens tomorrow. So, just a short look at what happened today. On this day in history, the 2nd of June, in the year 455 AD, we actually had the one of the many instances of the sacking of Rome. Some historians actually put on this day, the 2nd of June, this marked the end of the official end of the Roman Empire. So the Goths, this particular tribe called the Vandals, as a matter of fact, sacked Rome. So they stormed into Rome and they burned and looted everything, destroyed everything. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. Now, this is very, very, very important because one of the things that they did was to burn all of the libraries. That meant that a lot of the collective knowledge of the Roman Empire that they had been gathering over hundreds of years was lost. This is one of the reasons that Europe fell into what was known as the Dark Ages after the Roman Empire, because the collective knowledge of mankind, or European kind, of course, at that time, was lost due to the destruction of the Roman Empire. It is also, for those who are paying attention, where we get the word vandalism. The Vandals destroyed everything. So that was the name of a tribe, or the name of a group of people, the name of their army, if you will. And ever since that point in 455, when people destroyed something, oh, what a group of vandals, those damn vandals. This is pure vandalism. That's where we get that word. In 1763, we got an incident known as Pontiac's Rebellion. This took place in Michigan in the United States of America, where local Native Americans, the Chippewas, were able to capture the fort there, Michilimackinac. And they did so in an incredibly ingenious move. They played a game similar to lacrosse, the origins of the modern game of lacrosse. They were playing a game of lacrosse just in front of the fort, so that the way they used to play lacrosse back in the day, it used to be village versus village. And they would literally play over miles and miles and miles. So when the soldiers at the fort saw hundreds of Native Americans engaged in a game, it didn't strike them as particularly odd. They saw that all the time. So they marched their soldiers, if you will, out the front of this fort. And instead of attacking, they started playing a game. And then when the ball went inside the fort, they went into the fort to be like, oh, we just got to get our ball, excuse me. And that is when they struck and attacked and took the fort, which is genius. And I can't believe that worked. Um, in 1835, on this day, this is the day that P.T. Barnum, if you know the name, began his infamous circus and their first tour of the United States. This was perhaps the origin of the modern circus, although the modern circus has become slightly different over the last few years. But this was his traveling oddities shows, his acrobats, his clowns, and of course, all of the animal performances as well. And being able to take it on the road, packing it up onto rail cars, is how he became so famous. On this day in 1916, the Battle of Verdun. Now, this is not the start or the end of this battle. This is merely an event in this battle. This was a months long battle. The Battle of Verdun. German troops launched an attack on Fort Vaux, and again, I'm sure my French pronunciation is perfect, with flamethrowers. Now, why this is particularly important, this is one of the first successful instances of flamethrowers being used in modern warfare. And I say successful because, of course, they were highly, highly, highly dangerous and highly, highly unreliable. Even today, that is still the case. But they were used to some success on this in this particular instance. But this fort, the fort of Verdun, changed hands 16 times during the Battle of Verdun. So it was taken, retaken, 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 retaken. That was 16 times, which is insanity. On this day in 1924, speaking of the Native Americans as we were before in 1763, why would they attack a fort? Well, it might have something to do with this. The state of affairs in 1924 was still that they were not considered American citizens. It wasn't until 1924 that the president at the time, a man named Calvin Coolidge, signed into law that Native Americans, keep that in mind, that title, Native Americans, were Americans. And they were declared to be American citizens and given the rights to vote and protected under the Constitution, which had not been the case previously. So just literally think about that. Europeans settle in the United States, they form their colonies into a nation, they expand that nation from the East Coast all the way across the West Coast, and all the way along the way, taking all the land, and all the people they take the land from, they say, oh, but you're not American, even though they'd lived there for thousands and thousands of years. Amazing. I should point out the same sort of thing actually took place when my local country of Australia, which is also a shame. In 1953, on this day, we also saw the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in Westminster Abbey, London, England. She is now officially the longest serving monarch that England has ever had, and second to her is Queen Victoria. Well done. And the third, Queen Elizabeth I. Well done if you were playing that game at home. Amazing that queens managed to live so long on the throne, but kings managed to get themselves killed quite quickly. I should also point out, it's no coincidence that perhaps the three most successful times in British history were under Queen Elizabeth I, Queen Victoria, and Queen Elizabeth II, arguably. Anyway, moving on. I should point out, the deep dive for today is going to refer to this Battle of Verdun and this particular incidence of the use of flamethrowers. Now, before I begin on that, I should point out this is World War I. These are the flags of the nations involved in this battle. The French Third Republic. This was their third attempt at not having a king. The French Third Republic. And the German Empire. Note the flag for the German Empire. It does not look like the modern day flag at all. It does not look like the flag they would fly in World War II. I'm sure you're aware of this, but I must point this out because it often gets confused by people when they first study World War I. There are no Nazis in World War I. There are no Nazis in World War I. The Nazis were a political party that was formed in 1919 and wouldn't come to power until 1933. And World War I ended in 1918. So this is the flag of the German Empire at that time. Now, in this battle, this is something of an amazing incident in World War I, this particular battle. So the commander, and again, I'm sure my German is going to be perfect, is Erich von Welkenhen, Chief of German General Staff. And he had proposed in the so-called Christmas memo of 1915. He wrote to Kaiser Wilhelm II, and he made a proposal. We are not going to be able to fight through the lines. We're not going to be able to break through because of trench warfare, which we can go into in another time. But it was not. They did not believe they had the ability to break through the French lines. So instead, we are going to not take territory, but to take lives. We are going to cause the French army to bleed to death. So they thought if they attacked at this particular place in Verdun, the French would have to defend it so with so much of their resources that it would bleed them to death. It would take their resources away from other places in the war. So this battle actually began all the way back in February in 1916. 1,220 guns around an 8-mile perimeter open fire. However, this battle that lasted all the way through to July 14th, the Germans called off their offensive. So keep in mind that is 5 months of attack to achieve nothing. And Welkenhen was dismissed shortly after, mainly because of his failures at Verdun. And the fact of the matter is this battle did not go exactly as the Germans had intended. So what actually happened in terms of on this day. On June 2nd, the Germans attacked with their flamethrowers at two particular spots, Vaux and Thiaumont. Again, my French is perfect, which were two particularly strong points on the French line. They did manage to break through, but after days and days and days and days of combat, by June 9th, so a whole week, they had managed to capture those two positions, which they thought was going to be a breakthrough, but they were unable to take that advantage and take the fort and win the battle because simultaneously they had attacked on the left bank of this river and were not able to make progress there. So by June 15th, the French had reclaimed all of that territory, which was about 1 kilometer. So they fought for essentially 2 weeks over this tiny stretch of land, which again changed hands and changed hands and changed hands. This was not a decisive battle. Now, unfortunately, this is why Verdun is emblematic, is representative of World War One as a whole, and is the French version of the Battle of the Somme. For those of you who are masters of British history, where it becomes the focus of World War One and is the focus of a lot of the memorials that take place in France and a lot of the cultural understanding of the tragedy of World War One in France is centered around this battle, the Battle of Verdun, because this battle shows exactly how horrific and pointless it all was. We had many, many, many days of fighting, many, many months of fighting for this entire fort. It changes hands over and over and over and over again. And at the end of the day, they have achieved virtually nothing. Stalemate. So this is what Verdun looked like by the end of this battle. You can see they are fighting over ruins. It is a complete disaster zone. These are soldiers in the photo on the left there, marching in front of the town that they have defended for months on end, and that is what they are fighting over. Who owns the ashes, as the quote goes. By the end of this particular battle, one of the longest and bloodiest of World War One, the French had lost 400,000 casualties, and the Germans had about 350,000 casualties. Now, in order to keep those numbers in perspective, this is from one battle in one aspect of World War One, 400,000 and 350,000. That is more soldiers than the Americans lost in the entire Vietnam War or the entire Korean War. That is more soldiers than the Americans lost in World War II, for example, which is relatively insane in one battle, in one place between two armies. Wow. So all of those hundreds of thousands of casualties and to achieve nothing, to rule the ashes, as they say. This is why studying World War One is so important, so we can understand it was not a grand adventure. It was not an amazing war with heroes. Well, of course, there's heroes everywhere, but with heroes and villains necessarily. It was a tragedy on both sides. Nobody wins when people go to war on this scale. So I hope we understand the Battle of Verdun and this particular role of this miniature battle within a battle that took place over 2 weeks in June, and we understand the cultural significance of Verdun to the French. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next video.